Why betraying a super empath destroys the narcissist forever. And I want to begin with the word destroys, because it is the strongest word in this title, and the one that requires the most honest examination before we build anything on top of it. Destroys is a significant claim. It implies something permanent and something total, a damage that does not repair, a consequence that does not resolve, an outcome that changes something fundamental about the narcissist's subsequent functioning. And the honest account of what actually happens to a narcissist after betraying a super empath needs to be grounded in what the psychology actually supports, rather than in what would be most satisfying to claim. So let's be precise about what destroys means here and what it does not mean. It does not mean the narcissist ceases to function. It does not mean their supply-seeking mechanism stops operating, or their construction collapses entirely, or their subsequent relationships are obviously visibly damaged in ways that confirm the destruction to anyone observing. Narcissists who have betrayed super empaths continue to function. They acquire new supply. They maintain their social presentations. They move forward in the specific, efficiency-oriented way that the narcissist's system has always moved forward. The destruction is not visible in these externals. It is interior, it is structural, it is the specific permanent alteration of something in the narcissist's psychological architecture that the betrayal of a super empath produces, and that subsequent functioning cannot repair, because the repair would require a kind of reckoning that the construction is specifically organized to prevent. Let's start with what a super empath actually is in this context, because the claim that betraying one destroys the narcissist forever depends entirely on the specific qualities the super empath brings that make the betrayal of them categorically different from the betrayal of anyone else. The super empath is not simply someone who feels more than ordinary empaths. The distinction that matters here is the combination of two qualities that rarely appear together with equal development. The first is the depth of accurate perception, the specific, genuine, construction-bypassing seeing that reaches past what the narcissist presents to what is actually there. The second is the persistence of genuine caring in the presence of that accurate perception. Most people who develop the accurate perception stop caring. The seeing is sufficient to eliminate the investment. Most people who maintain the genuine caring do not develop the accurate perception. The caring prevents the clarity that accurate seeing requires. The super empath does both simultaneously, sees clearly and cares genuinely, reaches past the construction to the actual self and directs genuine, accurate, personally organized caring toward what is actually there. This combination is what makes the super empath categorically different from every other person in the narcissist's relational history. And it is what makes the betrayal of them categorically different in its consequences. Now let's be specific about what the narcissist actually does when they betray a super empath. Because betrayal here is not simply the ordinary harmful behavior that the narcissist's dynamic produces continuously throughout any significant relationship. The specific betrayal that produces the permanent consequences is the betrayal of the actual self's experience. The super empath in the windows when the construction steps back reaches the actual self, the wounded, defended, largely inaccessible self underneath the construction, with the specific quality of caring that the actual self has been waiting for since the wound that made the construction necessary. In those windows, something genuine happens. The actual self is genuinely met, genuinely received, genuinely cared for in the specific, accurate seeing and choosing anyway way that it has never before experienced. And the betrayal, the specific moment when the construction reasserts and the tools are deployed against the person who was just genuinely meeting the actual self, is not simply the narcissist's ordinary harmful behavior. It is the actual self's betrayal of the only genuine meeting it has ever had. And the actual self registers this betrayal in a way that is different in kind from how the construction registers it. The construction manages everything. The actual self carries everything. And the specific, permanent thing the actual self carries after betraying the super empath is the knowledge of what it did to the one person who was genuinely meeting it. That knowledge does not go away, does not get managed into something more comfortable, does not resolve into the narrative that the construction builds around every other relationship and its ending. It stays. in the place where the actual self lives, permanent. And what that permanence does to the narcissist's subsequent psychology, and why it constitutes the destruction the title promises, and what it means for the super empath who was betrayed, that is exactly where we are going next. What that permanence does to the narcissist's subsequent psychology is something worth describing with the honesty the topic deserves, which means being clear about what the evidence actually supports and what the more dramatic framing of destroys forever obscures when it is taken too literally. The permanent thing the actual self carries after betraying the super empath is not destruction in the sense of functional collapse. It is something more specific and more interior than that. It is the permanent presence of a specific knowing that the construction cannot successfully manage back into the comfortable unconsciousness that the construction manages most things into. The knowing is this: the actual self was genuinely met, genuinely received, genuinely cared for by someone who saw it accurately and chose it anyway. And the construction's response to that genuine meeting was to betray it, to deploy the tools against the person who was meeting the actual self, to use what the genuine meeting made available, the vulnerability, the specific information that genuine meeting requires, the open quality of someone who has genuinely let another person in, as material for the dynamic's ordinary harmful functioning. That specific sequence, genuine meeting followed by the construction's betrayal of the meeting, leaves something in the actual self's territory that is genuinely permanent. Not guilt in the fully conscious, morally organized sense, not remorse in the form that leads to changed behavior and genuine repair. Something more primitive and less resolvable than either of those. The specific, unprocessed awareness that the one person who ever genuinely reached the actual self was the person the construction deployed its tools against. That the genuine meeting, rather than producing protection or honor or the care that genuine meeting deserves, produced the specific vulnerability that the construction converted into leverage. That the actual self's one genuine encounter was followed by the construction's betrayal of everything the encounter required for its continuance. This awareness, permanent, unmanageable, carried in the actual self's territory below the construction's reach, does something specific to the narcissist's subsequent relational functioning that constitutes the closest thing to the destruction the title promises. It creates a comparison point that cannot be erased. Every subsequent relationship is navigated in the presence of this comparison point. The knowledge, however incompletely conscious and however thoroughly the construction attempts to suppress it, that what was available in the relationship with the super empath was something categorically different from what is available in the current supply landscape. The comparison is not always articulable. It does not always rise to the level of conscious recognition, but it operates. It makes the current supply consistently, specifically, permanently insufficient in the particular way that the one irreplaceable thing's absence always makes everything else insufficient. Not dramatically, not in ways that are always visible from outside. In the quiet, background, 3 a.m. quality we have discussed in other contexts. In the specific flatness underneath the new relationship's surfaces. In the unresolvable quality of the supply landscape's general insufficiency that nothing available quite addresses. But here is where the honest account requires the most careful handling. The permanent interior consequence does not transform the narcissist. It does not produce the reckoning that genuine transformation requires. It does not make the subsequent relationships genuinely different from the pattern that produced the betrayal in the first place. The permanence of the carrying is real. The change it produces in the narcissist's functioning is limited. These two things are both true simultaneously, and the super empath who was betrayed deserves to hold both of them honestly rather than receiving one at the expense of the other. What the betrayal ultimately means for the super empath is the most important thing this episode can offer. Not the validation that the narcissist is permanently damaged, not the satisfaction of a consequence that matches the harm. Something more genuinely useful than either of those. The understanding that what was real on your side was real. That the genuine meeting was genuine. That the seeing was accurate and the caring was genuine and the actual self that was reached was actually there and was actually worth reaching. The betrayal does not retroactively make any of that false. The construction's deployment of the tools against the genuine meeting does not mean the genuine meeting was not what it was. It means the construction was what it was. Those are two separate things. The meeting was real, the betrayal was real. And understanding both of them clearly, without collapsing the first into the second or using the second to deny the first, is the most complete and most honest account of what the relationship actually was and what the betrayal of it actually produced. For the narcissist. For you. For the permanent record of something that was genuinely there, genuinely worth being there, and genuinely worth the clarity it took to finally see it completely.